What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. A huge thanks to those that have already subscribed. If you're not, please consider doing so, as this is a brand new channel that would help me out tremendously. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about this thing. This is the all-new Stark Varg. So I'd like to give a shout out to Foothills Motorsports in Piedmont, South Carolina for letting me hold on to their demo unit for a few days so that I could make this video for you guys and also rip around on this thing. I mentioned that as a thank you to them, but also to let you guys know this bike was not provided to me by Stark, so everything I say, I can speak freely. Foothills literally doesn't care if I just say it's the worst bike ever and you should never buy one. Fortunately, it's kind of the opposite. So if you're expecting me to bash this bike, you clicked on the wrong video because I am a huge, huge fan. Let's dive into why I like this bike so much. So the first thing that I noticed when I got my hands on this bike were the high-end components that they've done. Let's start down here on the wheel. So you have machined hubs, Brembo brakes, KYB suspension, machine triple clamps, machine swing arm. I'm not completely sure what these foot pegs are made out of, but they are super light. They're also super sharp. I've washed this bike twice, just when I got it back from my buddy Daniel that had it before me, who rode it on the motocross track. We'll talk about his experience there. And then I got it dirty myself. So these are very, very sharp, super wide. Just as all the fit and finish of this bike is just top of the line, guys. Well, with an exception that we'll get into in just a second. Obviously, you have the carbon fiber here. Also, a big fan of the tire choice. So they went with the Pirelli Scorpion X32s. These tires are absolutely amazing on this bike. And one thing that's cool about this thing being electric is that you can actually hear these things gripping when you're riding it, especially like the trail riding I did that I'm gonna show you in just a second. Now, if you've ever owned a dirt bike, you'll know that this is gonna happen and it's hard to get it to show. Actually, it's not hard to get it to show in this light. You see all these scratches that this bike already has on it. If you're running graphics, which I think Foothills is going to just put some Foothills Motorsports graphics on there, which will probably look pretty sick, that's a non-issue. But if you're just running the raw plastic, it's gonna get scuffed up pretty good in all the usual areas. Same thing with your frame, you know, and typically you're running a frame guard, but this is just wear and tear from boots. That's to be expected, and that's gonna be on any bike. So I cut the bike on using this power button here. Here you can see the screen, and we'll talk a little bit about this. I've had this bike for a few days, but I spent most of the time riding it, not messing with the screen. So a lot of the times with electric bikes, people are like, how do I know it's on? Well, you can hear a slight humming sound. I'm not sure if it'll pick up on the microphone. It does a little vibration thing when you turn it on, but I think people are worried about hitting the throttle. As you can see, it's dead now because we're in neutral. So on this screen, you see power mode 1, you see your battery level, and you see riding time. Now, I was super impressed with the interface of this bike, and that's because of all the features that it offers. So let's just go to stats, overall air time, distance ridden, time on the bike. Max speed was 87 miles an hour. I'm gonna go out on a sturdy limb and say that was not me. Gas saved, 2.1 liters. But one of the things I thought was really cool is when you go into the rides, it shows you. Give it a second to boot up. It shows you all your stats from your ride. So this was at the trail behind my house. Time, 20 minutes, distance, 2.5 miles, average speed, 7.5. So in my defense, that is me filming some good B-roll shots for the riding footage, I hope. Max power available was 80 because I did ride in all the different modes, but you get the idea here. We'll go down a little bit to, let's see, this one. So this one clearly done at the motocross track. Distance 6 miles, time 17 minutes, average speed 20 miles per hour. This was my buddy Daniel, who is a pro motocross racer, riding this bike. His feedback was how quickly you can take to this bike. The power that it makes is insane. I think he was saying 55 was where it's, you know, the most comfortable, which is kind of what you're used to. If you're riding a 350, 450, you're close to that neighborhood, so it's familiar. The 80 horsepower is just too much. It was too much for me on the trail. It's too much on the track. I don't know when you would use it, but it's sick that you have it. So another thing that I thought was kind of cool, don't know how much you would need it, is this parts. So it does take a second when you click on things to populate, but that's to be expected. This is some type of Android phone just running the Stark app, but I found it to be pretty user-friendly. No issues. I did take it out when I washed the bike. I'm sure it's waterproof, but it's super easy to pop out, and I'll show you that when we're done looking at the screen. So essentially what you have here is parts and accessories that are available, you know, on the fly, if you will, to order. So chain and sprockets. That's one of the few wear and tear items that you're going to have on this bike. Can't remember if I have to... where I have to click it. Oh, it just took a second, I think. Chain guides, front sprocket, rear sprocket. Surely there was a chain on here somewhere. Yeah, chain. So let's click on chain. When you do that, you get a little bit of information. You get a part number. You see the price, 80 bucks. Click one and click buy. Obviously, I'm not going to buy any of this stuff, so I'm not sure what page it takes you to after that, but I'm assuming you put in all your info, you can hit buy, and it's pretty much seamless, which I thought was really cool. Again, don't know how often you're going to use it, but still a cool feature. Ride modes. So you have 5 different ride modes. All of these are customizable. So I rode this bike in the woods, which you're about to see. Mode 1 was honestly perfect. It's like a woods bike, 45 horsepower and 60% on the regen braking. Again, you can customize all of these. So mode 2, they've set to 48 horsepower, and I'm not sure who set this up. I don't know if it came this way from Stark or if this was something that Foothills did. Braking is 80, 52 horsepower and 80 on the braking for 3, 56 horsepower and 80 on the braking for 4. And then the last one was all 80 horsepower and 59% regenerative braking, which is a random number, but either way, that's the modes. Let's jump into some riding footage. Another thing I want to touch on that I didn't include in the walk around review is the stand. So this is a proprietary stand. It is kind of heavy as far as stands go, but nothing insane. If I had to guess, it's probably 25, 30 pounds maybe. So you have this little door that pops down. This cord comes out, and this cord goes into here. So all you do is lift this up, spin that over. There's your cord. Sorry, I'm doing this one-handed. It's not as hard as I'm making it look. And then you'll see you have your cord here. So this is just tucked away nicely. You just kind of shove it in this little rubber grommet housing here, and you plug this in. So this is set for 110, but it does come with a 220 plug. Now, if you're going to switch it, and the 220 obviously charges faster, so if that's an option at your house, that's great. To switch it, you just pop these screws out here, and in the back of that housing, you will see that the power cord that's currently plugged in has this fitting. You just pull it just like an air compressor fitting would. Pull it to release it, swap it out. It can only plug in one way, so it's pretty seamless. And then you have a 220 plug. All right, guys, for the test ride real quick before we take off, I do plan to do all 5 modes, although we definitely don't need any more than mode 1. We'll get to that in a second. So mode 1 will be 45 horsepower and 60% on the regen. The bike is on right now. All right, so the bike was in neutral. I hit the down button and it's no longer showing the neutral. So, yep, we're off. Yeah, this is 10 times more power than we need. What I was talking about is, so the trail I'm going to be test riding this on is a little over a half-mile trail that I have behind my house. So it's like the width of a side-by-side, so not really single track and definitely not moto. So when I say we don't need more than 45, sorry, there's a safety wire. It was put on this grip yesterday riding moto. The grip was spinning. These are the stock grips. So we safety wired it, and now there's a piece stabbing in my hand. But anyway, we don't need more than 45 horsepower on something like this, obviously. I'll find a spot to stretch this bike out just so I can fully experience and give you guys some feedback. The power is insane. One thing I like to tell people, like if you've ever driven an electric golf cart, same thing. When you stomp it and all the power's there, that's how this thing is. But the throttle response is way smoother, way less choppy than like my 450 RL that you guys saw up there in the shop. You can't stand and ride that bike to factory ECU, which is another video. It's coming soon on this channel. But this throttle, extremely smooth. And in my opinion, this is a perfect application for this bike, because although I'm on my own property, and it's a good ways before I have neighbors. This is 22 acres, so the houses aren't super close, but if I'm riding one of my gasoline bikes, they hear it. So if I want to come home right after work, they also want to sit on their back porches and relax. That's going to be hard to do. Oh my gosh. .45 horsepower is perfect on this. Okay. So I thought I would give you guys my final thoughts and touch on a few things. So who is this bike for? Currently, there is no class that you could race this bike in motocross, at least not sanctioned. You know, you may be able to take it to your local track and some of the guys be like, yeah, sure, jump on the gate. But as far as racing goes, as of right now, there is no class for this. Now, I think it would be sick if there were enough of these out there so that they could have their own class, because that's what it needs. This bike is in a category of its own, and being able to switch power modes on the fly lends itself to some cheating, unless you just assume that they're going to be running the 80 horsepower. And a pro level rider, you know, like one of the top riders on 80 horsepower on this thing is absolutely insane. So I think you're at a big advantage on that. But if you're someone like myself who just goes to the track to ride, have fun on practice days, ride days, whatever, you don't have any intentions on racing, I think this would be a great platform. Because with that, if you're like me, you're gonna go out there for 10, maybe 15 minutes, come back off the track and sit for at least twice that time. So if you take a generator with you, plug this thing back in, and I think battery would be a non-issue for the duration of that day. Touching on that point, when my buddy Daniel was riding this bike on the motocross track, he's riding really hard for 20 minutes, and I think he used 40% of the battery. So with that, we can deduce that he may have gotten about an hour's worth of ride time out of this bike before it's gonna be completely dead. Now for me, since I'm riding in mode 1 and I'm riding mostly woods where you're not just on the gas the whole entire time, the screen was telling me, based on the mode that I was in, that I was gonna have about 2.5 hours of battery left. That is a great amount of battery, in my opinion, to go do some woods riding. I think it would be kind of cool to set this thing up as a woods bike, you know, put some hand guards on here. One of the things that I really liked when I was riding in the woods is no clutch, no shifter. So there's nothing to think about but gas, brake. You can focus on your body position, focus on your lines. And as someone who's ridden motorcycles my entire life, I just turned 36, so it's a lot of time on the seat. It's shifting and clutching is not something that I have to think about, you know, it kind of comes natural. But when you don't have to do it, you realize how much it does take away, you know, say you're in too low of a gear, too high of a gear, crap, shift down, crap, shift up. Not an issue with this thing. Another big benefit of this bike is lack of maintenance. So you're gonna have tires, which you're gonna have on every bike, it's gonna wear out. You're gonna have your chain and your sprockets gonna wear out. And then essentially it's maybe your grips, you know, like I'm not sure what else, you know, is gonna wear out on this bike. So you're not servicing air filters, you're not rebuilding top ends, you're not changing oil, you're not doing any of that stuff. Now the downside, I haven't fact checked this, so sorry if this isn't extremely accurate, but I was told another battery for this bike is around $7,000, and that came up as another rider said, well, hey, what if I bought one of these and I wanted to buy an additional battery, bring it to the track with both of them fully charged, is that something I could do? So I overheard, yes, you could do that, but the battery's roughly $7,000, so it's not feasible for most people. I would never do that. That's a whole nother bike. For $7,000, you get a really nice used gasoline-powered bike to ride while this one's charging. So there's a little bit of positive and a little bit of negative. The other question that I'm sure someone knows the answer to, but it's not myself, is how long does this battery last? Not for a ride, but how long is this battery good for before it starts to not hold the charge as well, just go dead quicker? I don't know the answer to that, but I would hope it would be a long, long time. This bike is $13,000 as it sits right here, and I do see the value. I think it's there, but for me, it's gonna depend on how long does that battery actually last, you know, over the life of the bike, and what is Start gonna do for me as an early adopter when it's time to get a new one. You know, are they gonna help me out? Are they gonna let me trade this one in? How does all that work? I'm not sure. If you know, leave a comment down below. Final thoughts on this bike. If I didn't currently have so many irons on the fire, I have another channel where I do stuff with Harley Davidson, so I'm putting a ton of money into one of my Harleys. I just bought the 450 RL, putting a ton of money into that. Also looking to buy an older Harley. So I have a lot of irons in the fire. Motocross bikes are not one of them right now. But after a few days with this bike, I was strongly trying to figure out how could I justify buying one of these. It's that good to me. I had so much fun riding the trails behind my house. I would love to be able to take this somewhere and ride. I'm too busy and I'm putting money into other projects at this time. So I would be a player on this if that wasn't the case. That's gonna be it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts on this bike. Are you a fan? You're not a fan? Any electric bike whatsoever? You need to ride one first. Just let me know your guys' thoughts on this and I'll catch you in the next video.